So today, we're recognizing Pride Month, but here in our community, we have also been talking about transitions. So I'm gonna meld those two for you, an idea that I got from Rev Terry, which I found really appropriate for today. Many of you know that I have spoken before. I am the mother of 2 trans children, and that I speak with their permission. I felt that I should do one more of these reflections to kind of finish off the story. I'm going to tell you how this was for me when my children came out as trans. Because clearly I had my own transition after a sense of loss, and that it has since turned to pride. So I found that there are various models that people use for personal and organizational change. And I wish I had known about these when all this happened, but at least learning them in retrospect, I've been able to map my experiences to a change model, and so kind of understand myself a little bit better and kind of feel better about myself and those stages that I went through. The model I like has 3 stages, and the first stage is called ending, losing, and letting go. Clearly from its title, you know that that one's the hardest. And the model points out to me that there are challenging emotions going on in that first stage. Frustration, of course, but fear and that sense of loss. My first child came out to me at age 17 as trans, and I can't say that I really understood it at the time, but I believe then, and I believe now, that gender identity and gender expression is for each person to decide for themselves. So my offspring asked that I use they, them pronouns and a new name, which again, I had no objection to, but switching over meant that I often made mistakes. Of course, I didn't mean to, but I did, and there was frustration on both sides around that. There was also a sense of loss with Ross's name change. Ross's original name was a gift from us, from dearly loved members of our family line. It hurt when Ross referred to that original name as a dead name, as is typical in the trans community. Fear was there too. I was afraid how they would be received and the difficulties that they would face, and that someday there might even be violence. I don't recall anymore how long it took me to get that name right and the pronoun right. It was sometime in the middle stage, the stage called the neutral zone. And in this stage, people feel impatient, confused, uncertain. And I'm sure Ross was impatient with me to get that pronoun thing right. I was impatient with myself. And in my mind, I kept getting confused about whether I was thinking about that pre-transition kid, he, she, or was I thinking now of the Ross, current Ross, they, them, he. So that was surprisingly difficult. And there was a lot of uncertainty too, because I had to let friends and family know. And you never know who was going to be okay with this whole thing and who wasn't. And it was every time. But at some point during that neutral zone middle stage, I felt like we were starting to do okay. And then my older offspring came out and said that they were going to transition too. So they, August, was at that time in their mid-20s and working professionally. That first stage of ending, losing, letting go, that one went by much faster, although the name change still hurt. The second phase was not as big of a problem because I was getting very good with the they, them, and the names. And most of the relatives had already gone through this once and had heard about the earlier child. So I was finding myself quickly moving to the last stage, the new beginning stage, with my own transition for those kids. The new beginning stage includes an openness to learning and a renewed commitment. And I found myself really interested in how Ross's company was going to manage this transition. And we talked about it quite a lot, going over the details. And that was the start of my small advocacy for trans folks. It was that time. So at the company I was with at the time, I was the first person who put she, her in their electronic email signature. And then I started asking HR for forms that didn't just say male, female for dependents and family members. I tried to explain to multiple HR reps what this all meant, and I hoped that by talking to a real person and a real family, that it would lead to greater acceptance. And I think I had some success in that small model. I would like to point out that the UUSN directory only allows male and female in it. Ooh, I checked. I do this. I check all the time. So by this point, both offspring, they have close friends, they have found families, and work is going just fine for both of them. I admire them, and I feel pride with that small p in what they have done, and also in what I've managed to do over this period. But for that other pride, you know, the one with the big capital P, I was less sure about where I fit there. I felt that pride events were for them, my offspring. They are on the front lines. They march to end workplace discrimination. They want to receive equal access to health care. They deal with intolerance, and they march for their lives. So it took some reading for me to become convinced that pride events do in fact welcome me. They welcome everyone of goodwill. Sorry. And I have finally become to feel that it is okay for me to attend those events, and by doing so, that I demonstrate my support, and I show that I, in my quiet way, am fighting and marching for their community too.